Welcome to today's brand origin deep dive, uncovering the hidden stories behind iconic companies. You've heard of the product, but do you know how overwhelming pressure and a desperate gamble on an unconventional agency reshaped its global image forever? If you find value in this kind of storytelling, consider liking the video and subscribing. It helps more than you know. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, or what you think of this brand's early struggles. Let's dive in and discover how it all began. You are standing in a forgotten corporate archive, the air thick with the dust of decisions made and unmade. Files are stacked high, binding brittle with age. Your fingers brush over a label, Macintosh pre-release materials. Inside, the pressure is palpable. The Macintosh needs to be a revolution, but the advertising feels safe. The weight of the world's expectation rests heavily on Apple's shoulders. Internally and externally, the stakes couldn't be higher. The search for an unconventional advertising agency becomes a frantic scramble, fueled by desperation. This leads to the unlikely choice of Chiat Day. A turning point many brand historians still debate was sheer genius or reckless abandon. You uncover early, discarded concepts, safe, uninspired ads that almost ran, lacking any spark. The recurring motif, the hammer thrower, is introduced here in its nascent form, a crude sketch on a coffee-stained napkin, a quirky, early spark of rebellion against conformity, found amidst the sterile, tension-filled boardrooms and the chaotic energy of the marketing department under duress. The emotional shift within the teams moves from quiet desperation to a flicker of radical hope, even as foreshadowing hints at the immense, almost fatal risk Apple is about to take. Building on that initial spark from the napkin, you follow the thread into the heart of Apple's corporate offices. This is where the 1984 commercial concept faced its true test, the internal machine itself. You witness the marketing team, brimming with conviction, presenting their audacious vision. But the atmosphere is thick with skepticism, bordering on outright hostility from key executives and board members. Pitch after pitch is met with resistance. Storyboards depicting the iconic hammer thrower are held up, dissected, and often dismissed with uncomfortable silence. A sensory detail you can almost feel in the room. The feeling of brittle film reels being handled roughly embodies the fragility of the idea. The team battles through frantic late-night revisions, driven by sheer force of will. This era explores a core tension in Apple's brand identity, its self-proclaimed rebel image clashing head-on with its own internal conservatism and profound fear of failure. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind the intense pushback. Was it prudent caution or a fundamental misunderstanding of the brand's burgeoning power? The hammer thrower motif appears again in refined storyboards, still controversial, now clearly embodying the oppressive internal forces they are fighting. The emotional shift here is palpable, moving from hopeful anticipation to stubborn defiance and near defeat. This internal fight was a major historical turning point, demonstrating the high-stakes gamble Apple was willing to consider, even if parts of the company weren't. A quirky detail from this period: one executive allegedly declared the ad the worst thing I have ever seen, threatening to fire the advertising agency. This battle foreshadows the deep divisions the ad will cause, even after its eventual, explosive success. Building on that urgency, you step onto the Phantom set. This isn't just a studio. It's a massive, echoing cavern being transformed. The atmosphere hangs heavy with the smell of dust and fresh paint, thick with anticipation and the controlled chaos of a major production. Harsh production lights glare down, casting long, unsettling shadows across the sterile gray world being meticulously built. This deliberate starkness is key, designed to contrast sharply with the vibrant, rebellious energy of the lead character. This space is where Apple's abstract rebellion was being translated into a tangible, unsettling visual narrative. Director Ridley Scott is here, a force of cinematic vision, collaborating, and at times clashing, with the brand's core team. You witness the casting of Anya Major as the hammer thrower, her presence embodying the disruptive force required. The sheer scale of the production is immense, a whirring hive of activity where every detail matters under immense pressure. Sensory details abound, the echoing sound of bootsteps on the bare floor, the buzz of equipment, the palpable tension of bringing a radical idea to life. The emotional shift is tangible, moving from initial uncertainty to a grim, determined intensity among everyone involved. The hammer thrower motif becomes physical here. You see the actual prop hammer, heavy and real, lying ready, a potent symbol of impending disruption. Brand historians still debate whether the sheer cost and creative friction of this approach were truly necessary, or if a simpler path could have achieved similar impact. An embedded artifact emerges, perhaps a leaked production memo detailing unforeseen costs or strange minor incidents on set. Like that time a crucial prop disappeared, hinting at the cost of such creative audacity beyond just the budget sheets. The filming of this commercial is the major historical milestone here, the birth of a cultural touchstone that would redefine advertising. As the final seconds of the 1984 commercial tick by and the screen goes dark, you are there, part of the massive Super Bowl audience. A collective breath seems to hang in the air, followed by not applause or immediate chatter, but a moment of stunned silence. Confusion washes over faces. What was that? It wasn't selling laundry detergent or a new car. It was a statement, a warning. Back at Apple headquarters, the atmosphere is thick with tension, rapidly curdling into panic. The phone isn't ringing off the hook with praise. It's mostly silent. Board members are furious, their faces red with anger, demanding to know why this controversial ad wasn't sold off as originally planned. They fear they've wasted millions, a truly colossal sum at the time, on an obtuse, nonsensical art film that bombed spectacularly. It's a major turning point where the company genuinely believes it has committed a disastrous, self-inflicted wound. There's a quirky, almost unbelievable detail here. Some accounts suggest one particularly irate board member stormed out of the viewing party, convinced the company was ruined. Then, slowly at first, the phones do begin to ring, cutting through the static hum left after the broadcast. It's not angry customers, it's the media. Journalists are fascinated, baffled, demanding explanations. The public is talking. That unforgettable image of the hammer-throwing rebel and the exploding screen starts appearing on news broadcasts. The sound effect and auditory shockwave repeated for millions more. Apple begins its unexpected explosion into the cultural consciousness. Brand historians still debate whether Apple truly grasped the magnitude of the phenomenon they'd unleashed, or if they were just passengers on a rocket they didn't know how to steer. The emotion in the room swings violently from terror and regret to shock and bewildered exhilaration. grappling with a fame they barely understand or control, foreshadowing how this intense spotlight might shape and perhaps distort their identity for years to come. You trace the ad's proliferating image, witnessing it explode from a television screen onto magazine covers, into newspaper columns, and across water cooler conversations nationwide. The 1984 commercial wasn't just an ad anymore. It became an instant cultural artifact, mythologized almost overnight. You see the think pieces appearing, dissecting every frame, applying interpretations Apple might never have intended. Unexpected political readings surface. Was it a critique of corporate conformity? A warning against technological centralization? The ad's meaning begins to slip away, taking on a life of its own, larger and more complex than Apple's original intent for a single product launch. This becomes a major turning point. The image eclipses the product. Amidst the noise, you notice the forgotten elements, the other, less successful ad campaigns launched around the Macintosh, the peripheral products that were supposed to accompany this revolutionary computer. They faded into obscurity, completely overshadowed by the 1984 behemoth. Brand historians still debate whether Apple fully grasped the implications of creating such a potent, uncontrollable icon. This section captures the struggle to manage an image that has become larger than the brand itself, the palpable tension between the rebellious, counterculture identity the ad solidified and the growing corporate reality of Apple. The weight of the image becomes a burden. The hammer thrower, once a pure symbol of rebellion, is now an icon analyzed, imitated, commodified, representing not just breaking the mold, but also immense commercial power. You sense how this fierce rebel identity might clash dramatically with Apple's future trajectory as it grows into a global giant. The hammer's lingering resonance. Years later, you see the sleek, reflective surfaces of Apple stores lining global streets. You hold a device in your hand, impossibly thin, smooth to the touch. The ambient hum of countless data centers, the silent whir of production lines, the polished efficiency of a modern titan. This is the reality of the brand today. Yet playing on a loop in the mind, like a grainy, flickering video on an old monitor, is that single 60-second broadcast, the 1984 commercial. It's impossible to escape its shadow. This brand, born from a garage and defined by rebellion, now sits atop the corporate world, sometimes facing accusations of embodying the very conformity it once railed against. The tension is palpable. Was the ad a true prophecy of liberation, or a masterclass in myth-making that created an identity the company would forever chase, and perhaps eventually contradict? Brand historians still debate whether the defiant spirit captured on that screen genuinely survived the scale and success that followed, or if it was the first casualty of becoming an empire. The hammer thrower remains an ambiguous icon, a symbol of necessary destruction. Yes, shattering the glass ceiling of the status quo. A moment of perfect, radical clarity in a world of gray. Or perhaps you wonder, was it the first strike in a long, slow process of becoming the very structure it sought to shatter? The enduring legacy isn't just the products they make, but the complex, sometimes contradictory identity inherited from that moment of radical advertising. It's the echo of the hammer hitting glass, reverberating through polished steel and glass facades. You're left with the lingering questions. What parts of that rebellious spirit survived the journey to global dominance? What was inevitably lost along the way? And what new machines, far more subtle than any mainframe, does the corporate giant of today quietly build? The story fades, but the resonance of that single unforgettable sound remains. And so we reach the end of this journey, tracing the lines from a single defiant act to a global phenomenon. What began as a challenge to the established order became the established order. The 1984 commercial wasn't just an advertisement. It was a promise, a prophecy, and perhaps a paradox. It showed us the power of symbolism, the birth of a cultural icon, and the tricky balance of maintaining a rebellious identity when you've become the institution. The cultural symbolism of that moment, the lone figure against the oppressive screen, continues to resonate, a potent reminder of the power of narrative in branding. It teaches us that a single, bold stroke can define a legacy for decades, shaping perceptions even as reality shifts. The lesson learned is that brands are not static. They are living entities, wrestling with their origins, their aspirations, and the myths they create. And maybe, just maybe, the soul of a brand is never in its product, but in the people, stories, and stumbles that shape it.